The 10th of July, 1900, Volume 3. Difference between living for God and living in God. While I was in the same confusion, he made himself seen like a flash and made me understand that I had not written everything he had told me the day before. That is, that the soul must not only live for God, but in God. So, Blessed Jesus repeated to me the difference that exists between living for God and living in God, saying to me, in living for God, the soul can be subject to disturbances, to bitternesses, to being inconstant, to feeling the weight of passions, to meddle in earthly things. But the living in God, no, it is completely different, because the most important thing, so that one person may enter to dwell inside another person, is to lay down all that belongs to him. That is, to strip himself of everything, to leave his own passions. In a word, to leave everything in order to find everything in God. Now, when the soul has not only stripped herself, but has slimmed down as well, then will she be able to enter through the narrow door of my heart, to live in me, according to my way and from my own life. In fact, even though my heart is immense, so much so that there is no end to its boundaries, its door, however, is extremely narrow, and only one who is stripped of everything can enter into it. This with reason, because since I am most holy, I would never admit anything to live in me which is extraneous to my sanctity. Therefore, my daughter, try to live in me, and you will possess paradise in advance. Who can say how much I understood of this living in God? But then he disappeared, and I was left in my same state. End of the reading. The 10th of July, 1906, Volume 7. One who gives herself completely to Jesus receives the whole of Jesus. As I was in my usual state, our Lord came for a short time and told me, my daughter, one who gives herself completely to me deserves that I give myself completely to her. Here I am at your complete disposal. Whatever you want, take. I did not ask him for anything. I only said to him, my good, I do not want anything. I want only you and you alone. You alone are enough for me in everything, because if I have you, I have everything. And he, bravo, you asked well, and while wanting nothing, you have wanted everything. End of the reading. The 10th of July, 1907, Volume 8. One begins to really live when he begins to be a victim. As I was in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself, together with my adorable Jesus. And in seeing him crowned with thorns, I removed the crown from his head, and with both hands I placed it on mine, pressing it thoroughly. Oh, how I felt the prickings penetrate into me. But I felt happy to suffer, to relieve the pains of Jesus. Then I said, my good Jesus, tell me, is there much time left before you take me to heaven? And he, indeed, very little. And I, your little can be 10 or 20 years. I am already 42. And he, that is not true. Your years only begin from the moment you began to be a victim. My goodness called you, and you can say that from that time you began to really live. And just as I called you to live my life upon earth, in a little while I'll call you to live my life in heaven. In the meantime, 2 pillars came out of the hands of blessed Jesus, which then became one, and which he kept leaning on my shoulders quite heavily, in such a way that I could not move from beneath them. While he was calling me, there was no one who would go to place his shoulders under those pillars, so they remained suspended in his hands. And while they were suspended, slaughters of every kind occurred. I understood that those pillars were the church and the world, which had come out of his most holy hands and were held inside his holy wounds. They will always be there, but if good Jesus has no place on which to lean them, he will soon tire of keeping them suspended in his hands, and woe, but such woes as to be horrifying. They are such and so many that I believe it is better to keep them in silence. End of the reading. The 10th of July, 1922, Volume 19. Living in the divine will is to repeat the real life of Jesus, not only in the soul, but also in the body. Continuing in my usual state, I felt my always lovable Jesus in my interior, but so real that now I would feel him squeeze my heart so tightly as to make me suffer. Now he would clasp his arms around my neck to the point of suffocating me. Now he would sit on my heart, assuming an air of dominion and command, and I would feel as though annihilated and then risen again to new life under his command. But who can say what he did in my interior and what I felt? I believe it is better to pass over it in silence. Then, while I was feeling his real presence in my interior, he told me, "My daughter, rise, rise more, but so high as to reach the womb of the divinity. Your life will be among the divine persons. See, in order to make you reach this point, I formed my life in you. I enclosed my eternal volition in whatever you do, and there it flows in a marvelous and surprising way, as my volition is acting in you in a continuous, immediate act. Now, after I had formed my life in you, with my will acting in you and your acts, your will has remained soaked, transfused, in such a way that my volition possesses a life upon the earth. Now it is necessary that you rise and carry with you my life, my will, so that my volition of the earth and that of heaven may fuse together, and you may live for some time in the womb of the divinity, where your volition will be acting in mine, in order to expand it as much as a creature can be capable of. Then you will descend again upon the earth, bringing the power and the prodigies of my will, in such a way that the creatures will be shaken. They will open their eyes, and many will know what it means to live in my will, to live in the likeness to their Creator. This will be the beginning of the coming of my kingdom upon earth and of the final fulfillment of my will. Do you think that living in my will is something trivial? There is nothing that equals it, nor sanctity that matches it. It is the real life, not a fantastic one, as some may think. And this life of mine is not only in the soul, but also in the body. But do you know how this life of mine is formed? My eternal will is that of the soul, and my heartbeat, palpitating in her heart, forms my conception. Her love, her pains, and all of her acts done in my will form my humanity, and make me grow so much that I cannot remain hidden, nor can she help feeling me. Don't you feel me alive in your interior? This is why I told you that the sanctity of living in my will cannot be matched by anything else. All other sanctities will be like little lights, while it will be the great sun transfused in its creator. Now, in order to obey him with great repugnance, I will say how I feel my Jesus in my interior. I feel him at the place of my heart, almost in a visible way. Now I hear him praying, and many times I hear him with the ears of my body, and I pray together with him. Now suffering, and he makes me hear his interrupted and laboured breath, and I feel it in my breathing, so much so that I'm forced to pant together with him. And since all creatures are contained in him, I feel his breath diffusing as life in all human motions and breaths, and I diffuse myself together with him. Now I feel him moan and agonize. Now I feel him move his arms and stretch them within mine. now sleeping, and my interior remains in deep silence. But who can say everything? Jesus alone can say what he operates in me, for I don't have adequate words to manifest it. I did it only to obey with highest torment for my soul and for fear that Jesus might be displeased, because he bears with me as long as obedience does not command me. But if obedience commands, only the fiat is left to me. Otherwise, it would annihilate me. I hope that everything be for his glory and to my confusion. End of the reading. The 10th of July, 1927, Volume 22. Privation of Jesus. How one who lives in the divine will is the triumph of God and of the soul. I was doing the round in the divine will, and my poor mind was going around through all created things, impressing my I love you even on the highest mountains and in the deepest valleys, in the darkest abysses of the earth and the deepest ocean of the sea, in sum, everywhere. While I was doing this, my poor mind was tortured by the privation of my sweet Jesus, and my poor heart was tormented because as much as I called him with my love, I could find him no more. Oh, what pain, I thought to myself. How is it possible that Jesus no longer listens to me? And while I fill heaven and earth with my I love yous, none of my I love yous aims at him to wound him. And as it would make him feel my wound, my torture, my torment, in feeling my very pains, so as not to feel them, he would make up his mind to let himself be found by she who so much belongs for him. Ah, Jesus, how much it costs me to have known you and not to possess you, to love you and not to be loved back. These are pains that cannot be described. There are no words to express them. At that moment, my dear Jesus, moved in my interior and bursting into tears, sobbing, and his sob was so strong as to resound so penetrating to the ear of my body that I too cried together with him. He told me, "My daughter, how can you believe that I am far away? How can you think that you are not loved back by your Jesus? Each I love you of yours was one more wound to my heart that made me say, my daughter, you make your I love you resound everywhere for me, from the mountains, from the valleys, from the sea, from the flowery fields, from the sun, from everywhere. And though hidden in you, I repeated, I love you, my daughter. But I feel myself cut to the quick when you thought that I did not love you back. This cannot be, my daughter. Not to love in return is not the nature of your Jesus, nor am I able to do so. And if I am hidden in you without revealing myself, it is my justice that hides me and wants to punish the peoples with strong scourges. Oh, how many of them will pour upon the earth, and of all kinds, because they are irritating my justice very much. I hide from you so that it may follow its course." Having said this, he kept silent and disappeared, and I was feeling so bad that I could not stop crying. Then later on, he came back and told me, "My daughter, the triumph of God is the human will operating in his own. That is his victory, to have what came out of him come back into himself, into his own will. As the soul operates in it, she extends within the divine boundaries, and her acts take their place in everything that is eternal. It is true that my will is everywhere. There is not one point that can escape it. But where does it carry out its power, his divine operating? In the soul who lives in it. The soul who lives in it gives it the occasion for new works. She allows it to put out the beautiful and the holy that it possesses inside. It happens as it did in creation. Our being existed ab eterno, but nothing could be seen outside of ourselves before creation, because all our operating, our portents and beatitudes were carried out within ourselves. But when our divine being wanted to operate outside of ourselves, our will had the occasion to operate. And it issued the whole universe with such sumptuousness, order, and harmony as to form the amazement of all generations and the triumph and victory of our Supreme Being. The same with the soul who lives in our will. As she operates, she gives it the occasion to form more works worthy of it. Therefore, she is our continuous triumph and the carrying out of our works. She keeps the divine attitude up. So while forming our triumph and our victory, at the same time, the soul triumphs and conquers the divine will. Therefore, both one and the other are seen as victorious, God and the littleness of the creature. Do you think it is trivial that the littleness of the creature sings victory, moves the divine will to operate, and conquers it? After this, my poor mind continued to go round in the creation, to bring before the Supreme Majesty all the acts that the divine will does in each created thing, and all those that it has done in the Sovereign Queen and in the most holy humanity of our Lord. Reuniting everything together, I carried them like as many births from the divine will, all worthy of a God thrice holy. It seems to me that only the work of the divine will can give the most beautiful homages and worthy of a God. At that moment, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, how admirable, harmonious, all ordered among themselves, and of rare beauty are the acts done by my will. They are our divine army that, lined up around the Supreme Being, forms our glory, our defense, our happiness without end. What comes out of the divine fiat carries the divine seal, and as they come out, more than legitimate children of ours, they never lose life. If you never give life to your will, you too can be called an act of the divine will, and as an act of it, you will come to acquire the right over all of its acts. You will take your place in our army. You will be our legitimate daughter, and as though a sister to all the acts of our will. And therefore you will have the power to unite them all together, to bring us the glory, the happiness of all the acts of the eternal fiat. What a difference between one who is an act of the divine will and one who is not. An act of it can be a sun, a heaven, a sea of eternal love, a beatitude and happiness that never ends. What can one act of my will not do? My will is eternal and makes its acts eternal. It is immense light, and all of its acts have the fullness of light. There is nothing of it that does not invest its acts. On the other hand, one who is not act of the divine will, oh, how dissimilar he is. He cannot take a place in the divine army. He will not be able to give joys and happinesses. His light will be so poor that he will hardly be able to look at himself. His acts, however good, because they are produced by the human will be like smoke that the wind disperses, or like flower that withers and dies. What a difference, my daughter, between the two." End of the reading. The 10th of July, 1928, volume 24. How the divine will wants to extend its dominion in everything. How the fiat will place heaven and earth in common. Unhappiness of the human will. I was writing, and while writing, I felt I was getting sleepy and was not free to write. So I thought to myself, and why this sleepiness? Up to now, so much vigil, such that if I wanted to sleep a little, I could not. And now all the opposite. How many changes one must go through, now one way, now another. But after all, able to sleep, I must say, fiat. At that moment, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, do not be surprised. My divine fiat wants to take its dominion in all the human acts. It wants everything to be its property and territory. It is jealous that even one comma may be taken away from it. Therefore, just as it has taken its dominion in your vigil, working, itself together with you in order to place the seal of its fiat as its dominion and property, so it wants to place the seal of its fiat upon your sleep as property of its eternal rest. It wants to find all of its similarities, its incessant work, and it gave you the vigil. It makes you embrace everything, and it gives you its immensity. It makes you sleep, and it gives you its eternal rest. In sum, it must be able to say and do, whatever I do by myself in my will, I must be able to do together with my little daughter, because as she gives me dominion over everything, everything becomes my will. Therefore, I can say, everything is property of my fiat in her. She has nothing left that is her own. Everything belongs to me, and I, in return, give her what belongs to my divine will. After this, I was following the divine volition with my axe, and the heavens, the stars, the sun seemed so beautiful to me that from the depth of my heart I kept repeating, how beautiful are the works of my Creator, and the order, the harmony that the omnipotent fiat has in all creation. Oh, if this order and harmony were present in the midst of creatures, the face of the earth would change. And my beloved Jesus added, my daughter, when my will dominates on earth, there will be a perfect union between heaven and earth. One will be the order, one the harmony, one the echo, one the life, because one will be the will. Even more, as though many mirrors will be seen in heaven, and creatures reflecting themselves in them will look at what the blessed in heaven are doing. They will hear their chants, their celestial melodies, and by their imitating what they do, their chants, their melodies, there will be the life of heaven in the midst of creatures. My fiat will place everything in common, and there will be the true life of the fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven. Then will my will sing victory, and the creature will sing the hymn of its triumph. Then he kept silent, and after a little while he added, my daughter, the human will has produced so much evil as to form the unhappy state of the poor creature. It changed her lot, her fortune. Since I am happy by my own nature, everything that came out of our creative hands in creation came out with the fullness of happiness. Therefore, everywhere, inside and outside of man, flowed perennial joy and happiness. The human will drove this sea of true and perpetual happiness out of itself, which, driven out, took refuge in the womb of its Creator, who had issued it so that all of his works might be happy. And even though we are happy by our nature, and no one can shade our happiness, we are forced to see man unhappy, to whom primacy in creation had been given, and to see our children unhappy, to see that the sea of our happiness is not enjoyed by the one who was the owner of it, even though it causes no harm to us, is always a sorrow. Now, one who lives in my divine will calls this sea of happiness again into herself. She removes from us the sight of the unhappiness in the poor creatures, and she makes us twice as happy because we see that our happiness takes its way toward our children. Therefore, my divine will put all things in place and will take away the unhappiness produced by the human will that with its poisonous slobber knows how to embitter everything and make everything turbid. How beautiful it is to see everyone happy. What a consolation for a father to have and to see the crown of his children, all happy, rich, healthy, beautiful, always smiling, never crying. Oh, how he enjoys and feels himself swimming in his own happiness and all of his children. I am more than a father, and I feel within me the happiness of my children, because it is my own thing, and it can enter into me, while unhappiness is something extraneous to me, that does not belong to me and does not have the way to enter into me. I feel the sorrow of seeing it, but not of feeling. And as father, I love and want everyone to be happy. End of the reading. There are no more readings today.